So we're going into the third week of the game and more people are arriving at level 30, so now they're in front of the choice, what Lightcone do I choose in the Battle Pass? Now of course this is just for people that are paying for the Battle Pass, so you know, for free to plays this video is kind of useless, but if you did buy the Battle Pass then this video is for you, because we're going to check out every single Lightcone together and just talk about which ones are useful, which ones are useless, and which ones are okay. So I would say let's get into it. So let's get started with the Abundance one. The passive reads: increases the wearer's max HP by 16%. When using a basic attack or skill, restores all allies' HP by an amount equal to 2% of their respective max HP. Now, right away you would think, okay, you know, that sounds like a pretty nice healer Lightcone, you know, HP increase because, you know, the healers are HP scaling, and, you know, that additional heal on top of the characters, you know, that sounds amazing. Let me get this one to make sure they're always topped up, but it's not that, you know, rainbows and sunshine. So first off, let's talk about the max HP. Now, you might be thinking, why the fuck are you going to talk about max HP? That seems like, you know, whatever. But if we go over to the healer's Lightcones, you will very quickly realize, wait a minute, max HP increase is actually kinda rare. So if we look at this one, it increases energy regeneration and outgoing healing. This one increases outgoing healing and energy. This one increases effect resistance and outgoing healing. This one energy once again. And, you know, here we arrive at the one from the Battle Pass. From all 4 stars, this is the only one that has an increase in max HP. The only other one. So if we look at these, for example, you know, we have outgoing healing again, energy again, and we have, you know, advance forward. But these are 3 stars and, you know, base stats are low, so most people probably don't use them. But if we go over to the 5-star one, you will see that this is the only other one that actually increases HP. Now, of course, you know, this one also increases outgoing healing and does a bunch of useful stuff, but it's a 5-star. We're not talking about 5 stars. We're not going to compare a 5-star to a 4-star. That's just unfair. So just looking at that, you know, that max HP is actually kind of useful, because not only does it increase the healing of the healers, but it also makes them tankier, which in my opinion is more important than just pure raw heals, because you know when a healer can't heal anymore, when they're dead. So having that, you know, tanky healer, at least to me, seems pretty important. But is that enough to actually convince us? Well, let's look at the second part. So when they use a basic attack or skill, they will heal everyone by 2%. And you will say, okay, you know, that's kind of nice, because, you know, healer scales off of HP. No, it takes the HP of the respective character. So let's say your Danheng, that is completely built on attack percent and crit, he is going to be healed based on his own HP. Now, imagine you have a bar, right? And that entire bar is 100%. Now let's take 2% of that bar. That's how much you're going to heal. That's basically a fart of a heal. So, especially the max level, it increases to 4%. Damn! And you have to realize that this only procs when it's the healer's turn. So this is not even like super consistent, and is not gonna like make you survive fights, to be honest. Like, so yeah, right there, this Lightcone kind of dies off for me. You know, it's funny to say, but the max HP is genuinely the best part of this Lightcone. So yeah, I would put this at like kind of useless, maybe okay, you know, kind of okay, to be honest. So let's go to the next one, Nihility. The passive reads: after the wearer uses basic attacks or skills, deals an additional damage equal to 48% of the wearer's attack to a random enemy that has been attacked. So right away we see that this one focuses a lot on damage, but right away, at least what like jumped out at me is that it sounds like a shitty amount of damage. So first off, it only procs when the wearer does a basic attack or skill, so they need to wait for their turn, and it doesn't even proc on their ult, which is, you know, just another limitation to make it kind of feel worse. But then the real kicker, you know, the part that is supposed to make this Lightcone unique and good, is a whopping 48%. And if we go to the max level, you know, you would have to buy this 5 times 5 battle passes. That's $50. For $50 you're getting 96% of, you know, damage on one enemy, which is even worse. Now, if this was a damage instance on all enemies that you attacked, that would, flip it over. That would actually be like, a nice free AoE attack. But let's say you have Sampo and your Sampo attacks like 3 enemies at the same time. Only one of them is going to be attacked by this extra hit, which is just like, what is the point? Especially if we look at the other options that you have, we have other options like, this one that increases the break effect and increases damage, if the enemy is shocked or is, afflicted by wind shear. Then we have this absolutely insane one, which literally gives you defense down, which increases your entire party's damage. Then we have this one, which is also really good, increases your effect hit rate, very important for Nihility characters because they're all about debuffs, and increases damage over time damage. Damage over time damage? Dot damage? You know what I mean. And, this one is also just very nice, for every debuff, you just do more damage, stacks up to 3 times. So this just feels like so out of place. It feels like someone that has no interest in Nihility characters made this Lightcone and, just called it a day. And somehow this got through many teams at MiHoYo, and somehow they actually put it into the Battle Pass. In my opinion, useless. Then on to Preservation. The passive reads, increases the wearer's defense by 16%, increases the damage of the wearer when they use their ultimate by 60% based on their defense. This effect can only apply 1 time per enemy target. So right away, we see the defense increase, very nice because all of our 3 tanks scale on defense. Now, compared to the healer one, I do have to say that the defense percent is not as rare as the HP percent for healers. Like if we, for example, look at this one, increases defense. If we look at this one, increases defense. So, there are options. So the defense percent is definitely not gonna win us over, but it's a, nice thing. It's a little stat stick. But on to the second part, is it going to convince us? Increases the damage of their ultimate based on the defense. Now, I do have to say that 60%, that's a pretty hefty amount, but let's think about this for a second. Let's go over to our tank characters and let's actually see who can make use of this. So first off, we have Jeopard. His ult literally doesn't do damage. It only puts a shield in your party. So straight away, there is no enemy target, it's literally not going to do anything. Useless. Let's go over to March. Now, March, like her ult isn't really supposed to do a lot of damage, like it's more about the freezing and stuff like that. So if you for some reason feel like just putting more damage onto March's ult, then sure, but it feels kind of useless, like you're forcing another role onto her ult, so you're kind of making like a jack of all trades ult, which is kind of just like, not good at anything. Then onto the last one, we have Trailblazer Fire. Now Trailblazer Fire, as we know, they actually have a Slappin' ult, which also scales pretty heavily on defense. If we look at this, level 10, 150% defense scaling, which is quite a lot, and if you add that, 60%, and if you max level it, 120%, that can be a heavy ult that can actually deal some damage. Now, of course, no one has yet actually gotten this Lightcone at max level, so no one can actually show it off, but it seems like an option. But then arises the question, do you actually want to bother with this? Just like I said with March's ult, do we actually want to make a jack of all trades? If you take me, for example, I want single responsibility on my characters. If I have a tank, I want them to tank. If I have a DPS, I want them to do DPS. I'm not like a huge fan of these types of things where they try to fit multiple roles into one role. So here you will get, a tanky character, but they do focus on a bit of damage. What I'd rather want, if we go over to this Lightcone, which I'm actually right now already using on my Trailblazer Fire, this one increases defense and it reduces damage taken for all of your allies. So, as I said, I want my tank to be responsible for the tankiness of my team. I don't really care about the ult damage of my Fire MC. Now, of course, there's gonna be people that just wanna, get the numbers up and like flex on people and make like a Reddit post so they can get like 200 upvotes because, wow, look at this quirky thing, but that's not what I'm about. I just want my characters to be really good at the thing that they're good at. And for tanks, they gotta be tanky. So I would say niche. I would not call it bad, because it does have nice synergy, you know, it gives you defense and it gives you defense scaling, but would I actually go out of my way to get it and especially like buy it 5 times to max it out? Not yet, at least. Maybe at some point, but for sure not my first choice, maybe not even my second. So decent. Then on to the hunt. The passive reads: increases the wearer's crit rate by 12%. After a crit hit, there's a 16% fixed chance to dispel 1 buff on the target enemy. This effect can only trigger 1 time per attack. So straight away we have that nice amount of crit rate, but is it really that special? And I can, you know, say, yeah, that's actually, you know, a pretty nice amount of crit rate. If you look at the other 4-star options, like this is basically the only other one that gives you crit rate, but it's a conditional. You know, only if there's 2 enemies or less. And as we all know, most bosses spawn like 2 enemies. So you lose your crit buff, you need to kill one of them without your crit buff, and only then you get your crit buff back. And maybe then after that, they're just gonna spawn 2 extra. So it's kind of, you know, so straight away that, you know, crit that you get there, it's nice. But is it nice enough? Not really, because we also have this option. So maybe you've seen my video about it, but basically this is a light cone that you can get for free by just playing the simulated universe, and this actually gives you quite a lot of crit rate as well, actually like way more. You know, we can max superimpose it, so I'm just gonna put it at level 5, and as you can see it can give you up to 32% crit rate, with just, you know, 16% being permanent. And then we're not even talking about the attack buff that you get besides that. So if you compare that free light cone to this one that you need to pay for, you know, the crit rate is a nice stat. You can maybe put it on a different hunt character. Maybe you want to use Danhang and Sealy, so, you know, you want to give 1 to Sealy, 1 to Danhang, then sure, this could be a nice option for the crit rate. It's not really like something that makes me go wow. And let's go on to the rest. So this is what really makes this one unique, and on a crit hit there's a chance of dispelling the enemy. Now first off, I just want to point out that like 16% is abysmally low. Even if we like max level it, 32%, there's a 1 in 3 chance. But what really makes me think though is it says here crit hit. As we all know, characters have different animations and they also have different amounts of hits they do with their abilities. You have some characters that just do like a 1 fat ass hit that does a lot of damage, but you also have characters that do a lot of hits when they attack. So then I wonder, do they mean individual crit hits? Like for example, let's say a character's ability hits like 3 times. Does that mean that this chance can proc for each one of those hits? Because, you know, that does seem like it, because they're using hit here and not attack or whatever, right? Because that would actually change it up a lot, because if it actually, you know, registers every single hit, so if your character hits 3 times and let's say all 3 of those hits crit, does that mean that all 3 of those hits are going to, you know, get this chance? Because that would make this way better. If that is not the case though, then we're talking about a very shitty rate in my opinion, you know, especially now in the beginning when we can only get 1 copy, like 16%. You know, now in the beginning when everyone is like, you know, chasing progression, everyone wants their account to get stronger, we want to progress through the simulated universe, the Forgotten Hall, stuff like that. This doesn't seem like it's going to, like, you know, buff you up that much. Besides that, in the simulated universe, for example, you know, you have upgrades that can help you like dispel the enemy. And of course we also have Pella, which just removes a buff from the enemy without any chance. It's just, you know, she just removes it. So I would say there is potential here. There is potential here. As I said, if it really is for every single crit hit individually, then, you know, this could actually be pretty reliable on a character that hits often. But on a character that just hits once, this could kind of be a yikes, to be honest. Not really reliable, not really useful, but nonetheless, I have to say, compared to the other ones, especially like the garbage that we've seen until now, you know, this actually feels kind of useful. And it also, you know, has that little niche, because like imagine you're, you know, in the future they're going to release some crazy boss that has a crazy buff on them. If you don't remove it, you're basically going to be one shot. Then stuff like this becomes pretty important. For now, I haven't experienced it yet. So as I said, it's kind of niche, but there is potential. So actually, I would say decent to good, you know. In the right scenario, this could actually be like Pretty fucking good. Now on to the next one, the Harmony. The passive reads, at the start of the battle, and whenever the wearer turn begins, one of the following effects is applied randomly. All allies' attack is increased, all allies' crit damage is increased, or all allies' energy regeneration rate is increased. The applied effect cannot be identical to the last effect applied and will replace the previous effect. The applied effect will be removed when the wearer has been knocked down. Effects of the similar type cannot stack. So we have a giant wall of text, but if you've been reading along, then you might already realize this. This is insane. Like, this is straight up really, really good. So let's just run through it. So first off, one thing that really blinks out is that the character itself genuinely does not matter. Like, if you've noticed, this has nothing to do with the character. Like, for example, if you take the preservation one, you know, this one is specific to the ult of the character, so the character needs to do their ult. But if you look at this one, the conditional is that the battle starts and that the wearer has their turn. So it's like, you literally, like, don't think about it. It's so good. So not just the conditionals being very favorable, if you look at the buffs, like, this is so good. Attack buff, crit damage buff, energy regeneration buff. Like, the attack buff is good on damage over time DPSs in general. Maybe in the future we're even going to have healers that scale on attack, so it could even be good on them, who knows, you know. The crit damage buff is of course more for DPSs, or rather traditional DPSs that really build on that crit. And then we have that energy regeneration, which is literally good on everyone. DPS, tank, healer, doesn't matter. So not only are the conditionals good, the buffs itself are also good, especially if we knock it up to max level. 20% attack, 24% crit damage, 12% energy regeneration as free buffs. Dude, I'll take it. Now, there are some extra conditionals though at the end, and it basically says that, so let's say the battle starts and you get the attack buff. Then you get the turn of the character that is using this light cone, and then let's say, you know, the game says, okay, your next buff is the crit damage buff. Now, it's very important to know that these don't live at the same time. Like, you don't get the attack buff and the crit damage buff at the same time. Like, once you get the crit damage buff, the previous buff, the attack buff, disappears. Even that, honestly, like, that to me just sounds like balancing. You know, you still get your buff, it's still free, it's still permanent, there's no problem here. And of course, you know, when the character is knocked down, but that makes complete sense. So right away, I do have to say, like, if we compare it to the absolute doo-doo, which we've seen until now, this is for sure, until now, the number one easily, and this is just a really, really good light cone. So, on to the next one, the destruction one. The passive reads, increases the wearer's attack by 24%. Whenever the wearer defeats an enemy, they restore HP equal to 12% of their attack. So, you know, very destruction-like. You know, as we might know, like, destruction has like a fairly high taunt value, and they also have like always like this gimmick. Like, for example, Arlen has the gimmick of like removing his own HP. You know, Clara is taunted with her counter, so you know, her HP does tend to like dip a bit. And then of course from the beta we also know that Blade sacrifices his own HP. So straight away we see that this actually does have some nice uses when it comes to destruction characters. If you have a character that is attacked often, or you know, they use their own HP, it basically just makes the HP economy of that character easier to hold up. And besides the heals, you know, you get that attack buff, which is, you know, destruction characters are DPSs, so all of them like their attack. Now, some of them do like HP more than others. Like, for example, Blade, if I remember correctly, he was quite HP scaling in the beta, so that attack might not like be that good on him, but it's still not a wasted stat. Now, how useful is this light cone really? I would say, like, I would not call it niche, I would call it a quality of life light cone. Are you, for example, a Arlen main that, you know, doesn't have a light cone that gives you HP back, and you just want to really buff out your dude, but you're having maybe some trouble with keeping his HP up, or he's maybe dying constantly, and you're like, man, what if I had a light cone that can give me some HP, but at the same time buff his damage a bit? And in that case, you know, this would be a nice light cone. But then arises the question, you know, do you want to spend money on this? Because of course, you know, you need to buy the battle pass, $10, and then, you know, if you want to max it out to get the most out of it, then you'll need to buy it 5 times, 50 bucks. Is it worth 50 bucks? Up to debate. As I said, you know, maybe you have a character that you really like using in the destruction path and, you know, you really want him to have that extra HP buffer, sure. But in my opinion, it does lean a bit towards niche, right? But nonetheless, I don't think it's a bad Lightcone. So, on to the last one, the Erudition. The passive reads, after entering battle, increases the wearer's damage based on their max energy. Damage increases by 0.2% per point of energy up to 160 energy. So if we calculate it real quick, the max buff you can get is 32% damage up. Now of course if you max level it, that's going to double and it's going to be 64%. But this is of course in that best case scenario, which is if your character has 160 max energy. And now this is where I kind of need to disappoint, because that character actually doesn't exist. Himiko, 120. Jingyuan, 130. At least it was in the beta, who knows if it's gonna change. Herda, 110. Serval, 100. And then Yangchen is actually the best candidate, having 140, but still she does not hit the ceiling. So let's say in that best case scenario, we'll take Jinquei. Her buff is going to be 28% at, you know, superimpose level 1. At max superimpose it's gonna be 56. So that is actually, you know, a decent buff, I do have to say. And, you know, also something to mention is that this is actually a permanent buff. As you see, there's basically like no conditional added. It's basically, you know, after entering battle, the damage is increased. It doesn't say anything about turns or when it's going to end. So in that sense, I do have to say it's, you know, quite a nice and reliable Lightcone. So if we actually take a look at the other 4-star options that you have, you know, here we have this one that buffs follow-up attacks. This one, you know, gives you energy and buffs your ultimate damage. This one gives you attack and also a crit damage increase. This one gives you, you know, a damage increase and a little attack increase. And then we have the one we just talked about, which, you know, just gives you that damage increase only. So straight away you can see that the Erudition is actually pretty diverse when it comes to their options for Lightcones. And the only other Lightcone that really, like, you know, is right next to this Battlepass Lightcone that might give it some competition is this one, which, you know, gives also a damage boost. It's 12%, but it's of course at superimpose 1, and you know, it gives you 4% attack up to 3 times when you defeat enemies. So at superimpose 1, you know, the Battle Pass one definitely beats it out. But I do have to say, if you know, get this at max impose, then, you know, like, the story changes a bit, because you do get a nice amount of damage up, and you also get a nice amount of attack up, you know, up to 24%. So I guess in this case it kind of depends on, if your character really needs attack, then this one might be the better option. But I do think that this one in general does beat it out, because as I said, no conditionals, and the amount of damage up you get is actually, you know, it's decent. At superimpose 1, I wouldn't really say that it's like, wow. But at max superimpose, it's actually decent. It's actually decent. So I actually give this one a passing grade, and that's mostly honestly because it's a permanent buff. If it had a conditional, like for example, you know, if you use your ult, the damage increases for like, I don't know how many turns or whatever, then it would be a different story. But because it's permanent, actually pretty nice. So I would definitely give this one, you know, a good rating. So now that we had all of them, what do we say? Which one do you need to pick? Right away, if you just listen to me throughout all of this, you might have noticed that this one really got the most wow out of me, because, you know, it really is that type of Lightcone that just makes you go wow. You know, basically no conditionals, permanent buffs, varied buffs that can be used by basically everyone. So I feel like this is just a no-brainer. This is really the Lightcone that you need to go for if you want to get the most out of your battle pass thing. Like if you really care about like meta stuff and you just want to get the best thing. Because of course, as I said before, you know, you have these niche ones, like for example, if you're like a Fire MC main and you want to, you know, buff their damage more, then this one actually becomes like a nice option that you can, you know, opt in for. Or if you're like an Arlen fan that, you know, has trouble with keeping his HP in check, then this one could be a nice option. But hands down, the best one is this one. But let's say, you know, we're months and months later, you have finally maxed out this one. Which one should you know, get after this one? Now that becomes a bit more difficult because, of course, like that's literally gonna be in like 5 or 6 months by the time we can have 5 battle passes. So by then, you know, they probably will have released, you know, event light cones, new characters. So at that point, like the choice changes a lot because, like, imagine there's going to be a tank that is actually like focused really hard on dealing damage, which honestly I don't really expect because it would kind of collide with the other DPS paths, but just imagine for the sake of it, and this Lightcone is absolutely insane on them and makes them a super good DPS, then you could consider just hopping over to this one. But those are the what ifs. But for the situation right now, how I would rank the Lightcones is number 1, Harmony, number 2, Erudition, number 3, Hunt, number 4, Destruction, number 5, Preservation, number 6, Abundance, and number 7, Nihility. The absolute fucking garbage. Like, this is the type of stuff that once I have everything maxed, I'm probably not even gonna get this one. Like, I would actually feel bad for my money for it to be spent on something like this. This is just absolute fucking garbage, in my opinion. So yeah, that is going to be my ranking. Now, you know, most people probably already kind of had an idea of, you know, which ones are good, which ones are bad, but if you were still uncertain, I do hope that this helped you out with just really being sure about which one you should pick and maybe even which one you should pick in the future. So yeah, that ranking I basically give, that's basically going to be the order I'm gonna buy them in, but, you know, we'll see in the future. Anyways, thank you for watching the video, I hope you learned something, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.